Good evening. When I first heard about Ahmedabad's journey, the resilience shown during floods, the spark of innovation in its schools, the grassroots efforts to bring clean water to every neighborhood, I felt something deeply familiar. It reminded me that humanity's greatest progress often begins in places where hope meets grit. When we think about progress, we often imagine big numbers, vaccines delivered, schools built, emissions reduced. But true progress isn't just about metrics. It's about the human stories behind those numbers. It's about people facing extraordinary circumstances with determination and creativity. That's what I see when I look at a city like Ahmedabad. It's easy to be impressed by the statistics, economic growth, energy innovation, improved health systems. But what moves me most is something less quantifiable, the resilience of its people. The way communities there respond to challenges, adapt with strength, and lead with compassion offers something all of us can learn from. Resilience is not just the ability to survive, it's the capacity to learn, adjust, and emerge stronger. In places like Ahmedabad, resilience is not a reaction, it's a mindset. It's embedded in the way families support each other, in the way community organizations organize food distribution during crises, and in the way students keep studying even when circumstances are tough. This kind of local resilience is the bedrock of any lasting change. It's where global efforts must begin, not with top-down instructions, but with recognition and respect for the strength already present at the ground level. I've spent years working on global health, education, and climate initiatives. One thing that becomes clear the more you travel and engage is that there is no substitute for listening to communities. When we assume that solutions can simply be exported without understanding local context, we miss the mark. In Ahmedabad, progress has been possible because leaders and citizens are engaged in shaping their own future. They're not waiting for help. They're building partnerships, testing ideas, and scaling what works. That's where global empathy enters the picture, not as a handout, but as a handshake. Empathy in this sense means something deeper than sympathy. It means acknowledging the humanity and intelligence of others. It means trusting that the mother in a slum knows what her child needs, that a local NGO worker understands how to reach the underserved more effectively than someone designing a program from afar. It means building solutions with people, not for them. When we act with empathy, we create more than aid. We create trust, and trust is what allows real change to take root. One example that comes to mind is how local health workers in Ahmedabad use digital tools to track maternal and infant health. The technology is important, yes, but it works because of the human relationships behind it. It works because community members trust the workers knocking on their doors. It works because those workers understand the neighborhoods they serve. That kind of innovation doesn't come from labs or boardrooms alone. It comes from empathy applied through local action. And this isn't just about one city. It's a model for how we respond to global challenges everywhere, whether it's tackling infectious diseases, reducing poverty, or adapting to climate change. The solutions that last are the ones built on the foundation of local strength. Empathy helps us see that strength clearly. It helps us shift from a mindset of rescuing to one of partnering. It reminds us that the role of those with resources or influence is not to dictate outcomes, but to support what communities already know how to do. This approach also leads to smarter investments. When we design with empathy, when we allow local insight to guide global tools, we avoid waste. We avoid duplication. We find opportunities we might have missed otherwise. In Ahmedabad, I saw how simple ideas, like community, managed sanitation systems, or neighborhood-based renewable energy projects, become transformative because they are shaped by those who live with the outcomes every day. In our increasingly connected world, we face global problems that require global cooperation. But that cooperation must be rooted in humility. We can't pretend to understand every challenge from afar. What we can do is listen more, learn more, and let local resilience guide the way. The world doesn't need saviors, it needs allies. It needs people willing to roll up their sleeves and support efforts already underway. So when I think about what it means to stand in solidarity with a place like Ahmedabad, it's not about speaking for them. It's about standing beside them. It's about recognizing that empathy isn't a soft virtue. It's a strategic asset. And resilience isn't just something we admire from a distance. It's something we invest in, nurture, and celebrate. Because when local resilience meets global empathy, that's where real progress begins. When we talk about innovation, we often picture something sleek, brand new, perhaps digital, a breakthrough that signals the future. And when we talk about tradition, we often picture something old, rooted, maybe even nostalgic, a preservation of the past. But the truth is, some of the most powerful advances happen not when we choose between the two, but when we find a way to connect them. That intersection, where innovation meets tradition, is where some of the most sustainable, human-centered progress is being made. In cities like Ahmedabad, I've seen how this convergence plays out in ways that are both unexpected and inspiring. On one street, you might see artisans using centuries-old techniques to craft beautiful textiles by hand. Just down the block, students are learning coding skills that prepare them for a global tech economy. These aren't contradictions. They're complementary forces. Tradition provides depth, meaning, and continuity. Innovation provides scale, speed, and adaptation. Together, they create solutions that are not only effective, but also rooted in identity and culture. It's easy to assume that new ideas require discarding the old ones. But often, the best way forward is to adapt what already works. I've seen examples of this in healthcare, where traditional birth attendants are trained to use digital monitoring tools during home deliveries. The respect for cultural practices remains intact, but it's strengthened with new resources that reduce risk and improve outcomes. These aren't replacements, they're enhancements, and they work because they're built on existing trust, not imposed from above. This kind of integration also helps ensure that progress is inclusive. If innovation only speaks the language of the elite or the urban, it leaves out millions who don't see themselves in those systems. But when it draws on traditional forms of knowledge, behavior, and community structure, it becomes more accessible. In Ahmedabad, I saw agricultural communities using age-old soil techniques alongside satellite-driven forecasts to manage crop cycles more effectively. That blend of ancestral wisdom and modern precision creates a model that's both respectful and resilient. Education is another space where this balance is crucial. Technology in the classroom can be transformative, but only when it complements the role of the teacher, not when it tries to replace it. In some local schools, teachers are integrating digital tools into traditional storytelling methods, helping students connect emotionally with the material while also gaining critical thinking skills. These are classrooms where the past isn't seen as a barrier to progress, but as a bridge. What makes this work is the mindset behind it. It's not just about deploying tools or preserving customs. It's about a way of thinking that values both the wisdom of experience and the courage of experimentation. It's about asking not just what's new, but what's valuable, and how can we build on what people already understand and trust. That's a far more respectful and ultimately effective approach than any blanket solution from outside. This approach also inspires greater community ownership. When people see their traditions reflected in a new solution, they're more likely to adopt it, adapt it, and share it. When innovation feels familiar, When it respects rituals, languages, family structures, it becomes a part of daily life, not just a technical fix. That's how movements grow. That's how change lasts. I think often about the role of culture in shaping how we absorb technology. It's not enough to build something great. We have to ask whether it fits into the rhythms of life that already exist. In places like Ahmedabad, culture is not just a backdrop, it's a powerful operating system. It determines how people relate to work, to health, to education, and to one another. When innovation is layered on top of that system instead of cutting against it, we see far more sustainable results. In many ways, the future of progress lies in these kinds of fusions. The world is facing challenges that require speed and scale: climate change, pandemics, inequality. But solving them will also require sensitivity, history, and the ability to ground our solutions in the values that people care about. Innovation that ignores tradition may be fast, but it risks being shallow. Tradition without innovation may be deep, but it can become stagnant. But together, they offer something truly powerful: relevance with resilience, novelty with meaning. So when I reflect on what makes progress work, not just for a moment, but for generations, it's this harmony that stands out, not disruption for its own sake, not preservation as resistance, but collaboration across time. That's where the best ideas take root. That's where change becomes culture. And that's how innovation finds its deepest purpose. Philanthropy has always been about making a difference, but how we define that difference and how we choose to create it matters more now than ever. In the past, it was easy to view philanthropy as something linear: someone gives, someone receives. But over time, I've seen that this approach doesn't reflect how real change happens. What truly drives progress is not a transaction, it's a relationship, a shared mission, a partnership. When we think of solving big problems, whether it's ending polio, improving access to education, or reducing maternal mortality, it's tempting to focus on the resources involved. Funding is critical, of course, but what's just as important is trust, humility, and collaboration. The most effective philanthropy happens not when it's about power or control, but when it builds on local insight and shared goals. It's not about saving people, it's about standing beside them and investing in their leadership. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to work with brilliant community leaders, health workers, teachers, and innovators across the world. What they've taught me is that solutions must come from those closest to the problems. They understand the terrain, the barriers, the culture. They know what has been tried before and what hasn't worked. So, as a partner, my role isn't to direct. It's to listen, to learn, and to support the solutions they already believe in. That's not always easy. There's a tendency, especially in places where resources are abundant, to assume that money comes with all the answers. But that assumption can create distance. It can prevent open conversation. It can even slow progress. A better model is one where everyone at the table is heard, where the person leading a rural health clinic in Gujarat or a clean energy startup in Nairobi is treated with the same respect as a foundation executive, because the truth is, both bring something essential. This partnership model of philanthropy isn't just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. It leads to better outcomes. When local leaders shape how resources are used, projects are more effective and more sustainable. When people feel ownership over the work, they invest in its success in a way no external actor ever could. They adapt and evolve the work long after the initial funding ends, and they inspire others to take part. I've seen this play out again and again in vaccination campaigns where community health workers lead the charge, in women's cooperatives transforming access to banking, in classrooms where teachers are shaping how technology is used to match their students' needs. In each case, the work succeeds not because of outside ideas, but because of deep local commitment combined with the support to bring that vision to life. Partnership also means being accountable, not just to donors or reports, but to the people we aim to serve. It means measuring impact carefully, not to justify spending, but to improve outcomes. It means asking hard questions. Is this working? How do we know? What can we do better? And it means being honest when something doesn't go according to plan. That transparency builds trust, and trust, in turn, builds momentum. None of this is about diminishing the role of giving. Philanthropy still plays a unique role in taking risks that governments or businesses might not be able to. It can seed innovation, fill funding gaps, or respond quickly in emergencies. But when it does those things in a spirit of partnership, the results go further, they last longer, and they belong to the people who made them happen. We're at a moment in history where the world faces massive challenges, but also enormous opportunity. Climate change, health crises, inequality. None of these will be solved by one group acting alone. They require all of us working together. And they require us to let go of outdated notions of philanthropy as something top-down. Instead, we have to build bridges. We have to value knowledge in all its forms, not just scientific or financial, but lived experience. So when I think about the kind of philanthropy I believe in, it's one that asks, how can I help you succeed in what you're already trying to do? It's one that listens more than it talks. It's one that stays committed not just when the headlines are fresh, but through the long, often quiet work of real transformation. Because in the end, philanthropy isn't just about giving, it's about building. And the strongest structures are the ones we build together. When we talk about creating meaningful change, people often ask whether we should rely more on data or on human stories. Should we measure progress in numbers or in personal experiences? The truth is we need both. Data gives us direction. It shows us patterns, exposes gaps, and helps us allocate resources more effectively. But it's heart, the stories, the human moments, that gives data its urgency and its meaning. When the two work together, that's when real impact happens. I've seen this dynamic play out many times. A chart might show a reduction in malaria deaths across a region, and that's important. It proves that the intervention is working. But then you meet a mother who tells you how her child's life was saved by a mosquito net, and suddenly the data becomes real. It becomes personal. That's the moment when a number stops being abstract and starts being a story. And that's also the moment when people decide to act. One of the most powerful aspects of data is that it helps us scale compassion. It lets us go beyond individual stories and see the bigger picture. It helps us understand not just that something is wrong, but where it's wrong, how widespread it is, and how we might fix it. But data alone doesn't inspire people. Numbers on a screen don't motivate communities or ignite public support. People do, emotions do. That's why data needs to be paired with empathy. It needs to be brought to life through the lens of real people's experiences. In cities like Ahmedabad, I've seen how this approach can be transformative. Take education, for example. Local officials might track school attendance, performance, and dropout rates. But the real breakthroughs come when that data is linked to understanding why a child misses school. Maybe it's health, maybe it's family obligations, maybe it's something as basic as access to clean clothes. Once you connect the numbers to the lived reality, you can design better interventions, ones that are not only efficient but also humane. Healthcare is another area where this balance matters deeply. Data helps us identify who's at risk, where resources are most needed, and which treatments are most effective. But it's the trust between a community health worker and the family she serves that determines whether those treatments are actually used. It's the compassion shown in a clinic that ensures patients return for follow-ups. Data might bring them to the door, but heart keeps them coming back. You need both for a system to truly function. There's also a growing recognition that those closest to the issues need to be part of collecting and interpreting the data. That's when insights become sharper and solutions become more relevant. Community-driven data collection doesn't just give us better information, it builds ownership. It says your voice matters, your experience counts, and when people feel counted, they become more invested in the outcome. That's how data starts to become a force for equity, not just efficiency. In philanthropy and development work, I've seen how this blend can guide decisions that are both rigorous and compassionate. When we use evidence to inform funding, but also listen deeply to those affected by the issues, we avoid false assumptions, we learn faster, we waste less, and most importantly, we respect the people we're trying to support. Because no matter how strong the numbers are, if the solution doesn't resonate with people on the ground, it won't last. Technology can help bridge this gap. With the rise of digital platforms and AI, we now have more tools than ever to gather and analyze data. But we must use these tools thoughtfully. Algorithms don't have morals. Dashboards don't feel suffering. It's up to us to bring context, ethics, and emotion to those systems. That's the human responsibility behind the technical work. Ultimately, the kind of impact we're trying to create, whether it's in health, education, or climate, requires more than precision. It requires perspective. It requires the ability to zoom out and see the system, and then zoom in and see the individual. It means knowing that behind every statistic is a story, and behind every graph is a life that deserves dignity, opportunity, and respect. So when we ask what creates lasting change, the answer isn't data or heart. It's both. It's using data to find where help is needed most, and using heart to deliver it in a way that truly helps. That's how we turn insight into action. That's how we make progress not just measurable, but meaningful. And that's how we move from impact on paper to impact in the real world. When we look at the challenges facing our world today, climate change, global health crises, education inequality, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. These problems are complex, they are urgent, and they affect millions of lives. But the truth is, we've faced seemingly insurmountable challenges before, and what's moved us forward every time hasn't been a single breakthrough or a lone hero. It's been shared action, the decision by individuals and institutions alike to do something, not perfectly, not all at once, but together. One of the things I've learned is that progress rarely happens in isolation. Scientific discoveries require funding. Public health campaigns need community trust. Innovations in education need teachers who believe in them and parents who support them. Every solution is the result of collaboration across sectors, across borders, and across differences. That's the power of shared action. It multiplies what's possible, but shared action starts with a shift in mindset. It begins when we stop asking, "What can I do alone?" and start asking, "Who can I work with? How can I help others do more?" That change in thinking unlocks new resources, new perspectives, and new opportunities. And it also builds something less tangible but equally important, momentum. Because when people see others taking action, they're more likely to step in too. And when small efforts are aligned toward a common goal, they add up to something far greater than the sum of their parts. I've seen this principle in action in places all around the world. In communities where health workers, local governments, and non-profits are working side by side to reach underserved populations. In schools where tech companies are supporting teachers, not replacing them. In climate projects where farmers are co-designing solutions with scientists. In each of these examples, shared action isn't just a strategy. It's the reason anything gets done, And it's not just about institutions. Individuals have a critical role to play. Sometimes that means donating to causes. Sometimes it means volunteering time, sharing skills, or simply staying informed and voting with long-term impact in mind. Change doesn't have to be monumental to be meaningful. When enough people take small steps in the same direction, systems begin to shift. That said, shared action isn't always easy. It requires listening, compromise, and patience. It means understanding that others may see the problem differently than you do, and being willing to learn from that. It also means embracing the idea that no one gets full credit when something truly big is achieved, like eradicating a disease or transforming a failing school system. It's because many people made contributions that were invisible to most. That kind of humility can be hard in a world that celebrates individual achievement, but it's absolutely essential if we want collective progress. One of the most urgent areas where shared action is needed today is climate. The scale of the challenge is enormous, and no one country, company, or community can solve it alone. We need researchers to continue developing clean technologies. We need investors to back them. We need governments to create policies that accelerate adoption. And we need everyday citizens to shift behavior and demand change. If any one part of that system fails to engage, the whole thing slows down. But when all parts move together, even imperfectly, change becomes possible and even likely. The same goes for global health. We've seen how pandemics don't respect borders. Neither can our responses. When data is shared, when researchers collaborate across institutions and countries, when community health workers are supported and respected, we see better outcomes for everyone. It's a reminder that the fate of one group is tied to the fate of all. So what does shared action look like in practice? It looks like showing up when it's inconvenient. It looks like reaching out to unlikely allies. It looks like being willing to work through disagreement in service of something bigger, and it looks like keeping the long view even when the short term is difficult. The call right now isn't for perfection. It's not for grand gestures from a few people. It's for steady, consistent, aligned efforts from many. That's how change has always happened, and that's how it will happen again. We don't need to wait for permission or for someone else to go first. We just need to start, because the future isn't built by those who watch, it's built by those who act together. Because when we extend our hands across continents and cultures, we discover something universal. Progress becomes less about wealth and more about will. Ahmedabad has shown us what's possible when will meets wisdom. Let's walk forward together, because solidarity is not a gesture, it is progress. And in that spirit, we'll build a future that's brighter not just for this city, but for every city that dares to believe in hope.